Beggar was the most affectionate words I heard from my child's mother. Well, what can you do? What grew up, grew up. I earned as much as I could, but I was not very good at it. Yes, my wife was right in her own way, but didn't she deprive me of everything? The apartment where she lives now with her lover, my job? She forced me out of my own ensemble by intrigue and finally took my son away from me. In those infrequent days when I saw the child, he complained to me that mom makes me call daddy, stranger uncle, and she's trying her best to erase the child's memories of me, his father. When I met Viola, I hit everything: career, money, car, apartment downtown. When I hang out with her, I thought she was the best girl in the world. Viola knew how to turn on the appropriate demo mates, and I fell for it. I was already over 25, and everyone around me, including my relatives, were insistently telling me that it was the time to settle down, so I put my head in the news. By the time of marriage, I had managed to graduate from the Institute of Mechanical Engineering. In parallel, I studied in absentia at a music school, served in the army, fought in a hot spot, and created a rock band that was gaining popularity. I knew what I wanted and persevered towards my goal. Viola slipped into my band as a lead singer, although I then and now believe that rock is a male thing. Howling falsetto freeze isn't my thing. A woman singing rock is like a screeching scandalous woman in a communal kitchen. The new soloist was brought by our drummer under the sauce that we lacked a female voice, which would improve the sound of the ensemble. I resisted at first, but then waved my hands. Let her sing, as long as she doesn't get in the way. That was the beginning of the end. 6 months later, Viola and I moved in together, and 3 months later we got married. She quickly put her own under in my apartment, moving me to a secondary role. A son was born, named Emma. My wife didn't stay on maternity leave for long, having thrown the child into the hands of grandmothers. She plunged headlong into show business by all rights and wrongs. She pushed me away from the leadership of the group, explaining that I, as a creative person, should not be concerned with material issues. My calling is to create. Sometime later, I was surprised to learn that all the rights to my songs had somehow magically passed to my wife. Viola became a producer, and now she was eager to solve the issues of concert activity, not forgetting to cut coupons. I had to distribute the proceeds from the concerts, so it went on for about 2 years until a new law appeared on the horizon: Velo. Of course, we got a young keyboard player, replacing a musician who was tired of Viola's caprices and who had been tested for years. By this time, I couldn't influence the situation, so my wife had an affair with him. Passionate at first, it lasted like a sluggish tripper, but it got worse. The lovers, blinded by passion, didn't notice anything and nobody around them, until in the end, I caught them in the act in our house. The keyboard wonderkind flew out of the apartment with a black eye and 2 missing teeth. The wife locked herself in the bathroom and didn't crawl out until morning. She announced that the tomatoes have wilted and I can go to hell, taking my stuff, apartment, and the car she keeps as compensation for the wasted time on me. The next day I beat the young talent in front of everyone once again, and so successfully that I had to look for a replacement for a while. It didn't solve anything, but it gave me moral satisfaction. This time, Viola called the police when I returned after serving 15 days for hooliganism. The band director came up to me and, hiding his eyes, announced that my services were no longer needed. I received an envelope with a ridiculous amount of money and was escorted out. I tried to reclaim the apartment, Viola hired lawyers who politely explained to me that it was better to live. But Viola hired lawyers who politely explained to me that it was better to leave my wife alone with the apartments and the car than to suffer life-threatening injuries. I did not resist and gave up on everything. At the trial, the child was left with his mother. As I turned into a homeless person overnight, I could not create conditions for his normal development and upbringing. What now does my ex? I did not know and did not want to. I heard rumors that after my departure, half of the musicians scattered. Nothing new in the repertoire did not appear, and the band gradually fell out of the lines of the hit parades. At the same time, my mother's cousin died suddenly, leaving a tiny one-bedroom in an old house. It could not reach the raking hands of my ex, simply because everything happens after the divorce. That is where I settled down, and then my mother gave me my father's car, an old three which I used to drive to work with varying success. My father had been dead for 2 years. My mother lived with her sister in another city and visited me occasionally. She was very worried about me, but in the end, she accepted it. After what happened, I did not hate women, rightly believing that somewhere, most likely in the periphery, still meet decent individuals. Autoradio tried to sing something before I turned off the receiver. I'd had enough music for one day. In my breast pockets, there was the fee for the concert, warming my soul. It wasn't much further home when an oncoming car blinded me with its high beam, and I didn't see a vaggy shadow separate from the snowdrifts along the sidewalk. Suddenly, the shadow swayed and fell right under the wheels of my car. I involuntarily hit the brake and swerved the steering wheel. The car skidded, and its right rear fender, at full speed, jammed into a snowdrift. My heart pounded like a machine gun, and the screeching of the brakes was in my ears. All my life, ever since I'd been behind the wheel, I've been afraid of this. Not a collision with another car, but the impact of iron against living flesh. I sat there, afraid to open the door. Had I hit it or not? Finally, I got out of the car and looked at the road. About 3 feet from the sidewalk, a woman was trying to stand up in the dim light of the headlights. I couldn't see if she was hurt or not. I ran over to her. "Are you alright? Where are you hurt?" I asked. "I will call an ambulance." "Don't call an ambulance," the woman said, trying to get to her feet. "It was my own fault. I felt sick and dizzy. I'm sorry." She tried to walk but staggered and almost fell. I barely had time to pick her up before she was shaking. Well, of course, nervous shock. The stranger turned around and, burying her face in my jacket, suddenly sobbed. I pressed her to me and stroked her back. "Where do you live? Let me drive you." I tried to speak as affectionately as possible, afraid to frighten the woman. No, not home." She shrank back as if from a blow and trembled. I gently led the woman to the car and opened the back door. "Don't go home. I'm alright. I'm begging you." The stranger clutched at my jacket with both hands. Don't. Like an incantation, she repeated. "Then where to? To be honest, I was getting tired of her. I wanted to get rid of the woman and go home. I had a hard day today and I wanted to rest and relax. In other words, just get drunk." The woman suddenly stopped talking. She raised her head and looked me in the eye. "I don't know, take me somewhere far away from here," she whispered, and obediently got into the car. I looked at the clock. It's the 2nd hour of the night. I helped the stranger out of the car, picked up the guitar case, and slammed the door. "Come on, spend the night at my place, and tomorrow you will decide where to go." Hearing my words, the woman shuddered and looked at me fearfully. In the light of the lantern, I could finally see her quite pretty and not old, about 35 to 40 years old. Not well dressed though, coat not the right size. Looks like she wore the wrong one in a hurry. "Okay, let's go." It was dark in the entryway. "Strange, I just changed the light bulb yesterday. They are stealing, you bastards." I sniffed, turned on the flashlight on my cell phone, and shining it under my feet. began to slowly ascend to the second floor, leading my nocturnal guest behind me. "Come on in." I let the woman through and turned on the lights in the hallway. "Give me your coats." I carefully hung the clothes on the coat rack and let the woman into the room. I lit a table lamp and quickly heated the stove. Soon the room became warmer. I didn't close the furnace, and the glow of the fire jumped merrily on the floor, creating coziness and warmth. The stranger, having picked up her knees, sat in a soft armchair, hiding chilled palms in a Scottish plate thrown over her shoulders. "Would you like some tea?" She didn't answer. "All right." Silence is a sign of agreement. I put the kettle on and went into the fridge. Empty. Well, that's enough tea. I came back to the room with a steaming mug. Careful, it is hot. I put the mug on a large white painted stool that serves as my coffee table and adjusted the lamp. Its light fell on the guests, and I involuntarily shuddered. Her thin shirt was off her shoulder, revealing the straps of her lacy bra and fresh, bloody scars. The woman must have sensed my gaze, quickly pulled the shirt back on, and wrapped herself tighter in the plaits. I am not a ladies' man. In my short life, I have suffered too much from our gender partners. But what kind of a man would beat up a woman like that? I put her on my bed and settled down on the couch in the kitchen. I couldn't sleep for a long time. That bloody scar kept me awake. I smoked a few times through the window and threw birch logs into the stove a couple of times. Only in the morning I managed to fall into a shaky, anxious sleep. I dreamed of silent shadows scurrying around the entries and trees rustling in the vines, scratching my window with crooked, closed hands. It was still dark when I snapped out of the sticky nightmare. I looked at the ship's clock hanging to the right of the window. The hand showed 7:30. I yawned. How much sleep had I gotten? 2 hours? My eyes are so sleepy, but I had to get ready for work. I went into the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face. I looked into the mirror. It is not too much stubble, so I don't have to shave today. Besides, I wasn't planning on kissing anyone today. After brushing my teeth, I went back to the kitchen. I wonder if my guest is awake. What should I do with her? Leave her at home or... and what? There was no alternative. I sniffed. The scars again. What a lucky thing she forced herself on me. I put the kettle on and went into the room to wake the lodger. She was asleep, curled up, covered with a blanket. By morning, the stove was barely smoldering, and the room was quite cool. I brought wood, carefully trying not to make any noise. I opened the door and put in a couple of logs. Soon, the stove was humming merrily, throwing dancing sparks of fire on the ceiling. I wrote a note, where to put the keys, put it on the stool, and went to get dressed. There was hope that she would leave. After all, I got home pretty late. I was a little stormy, but generally felt okay. What's a bottle of whiskey to a healthy young man? I had to relax somehow after the concert, putting my guitar case in the corner and hanging my jackets on a slanted hanger. I went into the room. The first thing I saw was a melted stove. The room was warm. I swayed and grabbed the closet with my hands, not to fall. I lit the table lamp on the stool. On the bed, with her back against the wall and with her beautiful legs tucked under her, sat the lodger. She clutched her feet with her hands. "Didn't you go anywhere?" I asked a stupid question and, in surprise, even sat down on the edge of the bed. The woman looked up to me with red swollen eyes. A single tear slowly slid down her cheek to her lips. She looked strange, like she put something in her eyes. Huge, fixed pupils, thin white lips. I was scared at first. "What is wrong with you?" "Nothing," she replied. "You want to ask me why I stayed?" "I have nowhere to go, nowhere." Every woman is a bit of a dog at heart, and subconsciously she's looking for a master. She's looking for someone to belong to, and I guess I'm not a very smart dog. She stopped talking and swallowed convulsively. "I can't survive without a master. Don't send me away, at least until spring when it gets warm." I will go away myself, please. I can't sleep anywhere, even on the mats by the beds. I didn't let her finish. Stop talking nonsense. Live in this room. I will stay in the kitchen. I almost threw up for my nobility. Knights, I guess. You haven't had enough adventures in life. You find new ones for your ass. Women are cunning and devious creatures, pretending to be miserable and messing with my heads. Have you eaten today? Unexpectedly, no. She shuddered like a blow. Don't worry, I don't want to. I went into the kitchen, took the rest of the sausage out of the bag and put the kettle on. Then, after some thoughts, I poured some vodka into the bottom of a glass and took it into the room. I put the food on the stool and went to the bathroom. I looked into the mirror at the jerk who had never learned anything from life. I went back to the room. Okay, stay here. Sleep on this bed. I will go to the kitchen. I got up early today. I smoked for a long time through the window, listening to the sounds of the night. It will be March soon. There was a blizzard outside, and snowflakes were hitting the glass as if trying to break through to human warmth. Somewhere far away, a dog howled. Then, from the darkness, came the crying of a child. Through the dream, I felt that a warm female body pressed against me. Come to me. Her voice was hoarse and somewhat desperate. Would I? Subconsciously, I feared. Had happened, but there was no disappointment. It seemed to me that I was the captain of a frigate that had entered a quiet harbor after terrible storms and bloody battles. When the naked young woman clambered into my arms, answering my kisses timidly and passionately, when at last the last obstacle fell, and I victoriously entered my rights, muffling with a light kisser quiet moan, in my soul was born the tenderness of a tired traveler who found what he was looking for a very long time. That is how, without knocking, into my life burst Emily. 4 months passed. Emily was living with me, or rather, with me. Honestly, I never once regretted letting her stay with me that cold February night. I almost believed I would find my happiness, so much so that I was going to propose to her soon. But I knew that if she left me, I wouldn't survive a second betrayal. One thing that remained a mystery to me was the scars on her body. Emily was stubbornly silent when I asked her questions, and she immediately withdrew into herself. Eventually, I stopped asking questions. That evening, I drove home in a good mood, finally deciding to propose to my friends. The rain was falling. The sky in the east had turned black, beholding not just rain, but a real thunderstorm. The outlines of trees, cars, and houses became sharper and brighter. Everything around me froze, waiting for the first rumble of thunder. Having parked the car, I, clutching in one hand a bouquet of roses, and in the other a cherished box with a ring, almost ran up to my floor. When I opened the door, I immediately realized that Emily was home. I took off my sneakers and went into the room. There it was, menthol cigarette smoke. Emily was on the couch, holding a cigarette with her long fingers. "Hi," she nodded, a kind of detached face, a strange expressionless look. "How long have you been home?" "See, I just got in," Emily shrugged, shakily, as if it were January, not the middle of May. I brought a rope and threw it over her shoulders. "Thank you. I have been out today and my legs are tired." She sighed heavily and looked behind me. I suddenly realized that she was avoiding looking into my eyes. "What happened to you?" "Nothing," I said. "I came by to give you the key." There it is, on the stool. The bouquet fell out of my hands. I didn't understand the thing. "Emily, look at me. What happened?" I took her by the shoulders, but she kept hiding her eyes. "I'm leaving you. I'm sorry. Don't think bad thoughts. It is not your fault. It's just, I can't take it anymore. I've been happy with you, but now I have to live," she said, almost silently. I have no right to anything anymore. I don't want to deceive you anymore. It is all my fault alone. Stop torturing yourself. I began to confront her. What could have happened? Even if it had happened, it was nothing, nonsense. I was ready to forgive her everything. After all, I loved her. God, what am I talking about? It is not nonsense, Emily said. I came here to end it all. I am not coming back. You will soon forget me. You are good. You are kind. You will find someone else, not an ass like me. Don't judge me harshly. I just want to be happy. He called me. You hear me? He needs me. He loves me. My presence in her happy future was not intended. Who? I almost screamed. But there was something strange and unspoken in her words. That must be the behavior of a wife who has cheated on her husband or knows that she will, because fate inevitably pushes her to it. We were fine yesterday. We were drinking champagne and making plans for the summer, and now a shot was silence. I was speechless. My legs felt like cotton. I finally managed to squeeze out through my teeth, trying to play indifference. You can go. We're free birds. Goodbye. Maybe we will meet again someday by chance. Emily went to the door. Emily, I started. Shut up. I made up my mind. God help you. There was such bitterness in her words that my heart ached. I will go. I'm terribly tired. She opened the door. We went out into the entrance. Ben's neighbor, passing by us, made a meaningful face and said hello politely. Emily, before he could pass, suddenly kissed me on the lips. Remember me and forgive me. She broke away from me and ran out the door into the May downpour, which mercilessly watered the whole huge city, all its wet, shiny roofs and trees swaying in the winds. When the door slammed downstairs, my heart stopped. Man changes with time, but sometimes you feel sorry for your old self. But you can't go back to the past. Emily is the past. I opened the window. A warm rain scented spring wine blew into the room. She's just a woman, weak, treacherous, sneaky and fickle. And a lover? There's just no such thing as eternal love for one person. My time is over. Emily plunged into a new relationship indifferently and cruelly, stepping over me. She was like a ray of sunshine in a grey, wet city, a ray of light in the darkness. She was and disappeared. It was a sad song, as they used to say in my childhood. It's pathetic. Men don't cry. For a long time, I looked at the wasteland covered with bright green grass, with last year's stalks of weeds sticking out. The old city cemetery with its rusty gates shriveled up. My hands were clenched into fists. It was as if I had my heart in them. Somewhere inside, pain was born. It slowly spread through my body, filling every cell. I began to pace the room, from the window to the door and back again. It was only natural. Sooner or later, it had to happen. What am I to her? An episode? Yes. What do I know about her? Where she came from? Who she was with before? What if she confessed her love to me? How many things can you make up for yourself? Why do I think Emily owes me anything? What am I to her? A temporary traveling companion? If it's not your favorite, it is your turn. My turn is over. Have I forgotten that women are not permanent? That they stop over old love without regrets, faultlessly and cruelly, in pursuit of new love? I've been through it all before, but life seems to have taught me nothing. We will get through this. It is going to be alright. I put my face to the winds. Men don't cry. It's just raindrops on their cheeks. I took a bottle of vodka out of the fridge and drank it all from the neck, and then, drinkingly, played night blues on the guitar for a long time. The overcast morning did not bring peace. I was lying on my bed, hugging my old guitar. There was an empty vodka bottle on a stool next to it. Bad luck, no money. I put the bottle on the floor. At the end of the summer, I saw Emily again. She was laughing merrily, getting into an expensive red car in a parking lot near a supermarket. The lights of multicolored advertisements were reflected in the windshields of the luxury car. Next to her was a young, imposing man. He gallantly opened the door and sat his happy companion on the front seat. He, too, was laughing merrily. You bet he was, because it was his turn. I looked at my blonde woman in silence for a while, then turned around and slowly walked past the grey, hunched horses. A couple of months later, in late fall, Emily found me. She walked through my door one rainy evening, scenting me with expensive perfume. I stepped aside to let her into the apartment, and without saying a word, I went into the kitchen to put the kettle on. When I entered the room with a cup of tea in my hands, Emily was standing at the window, staring into the darkness. She turned to me and wiped her eyes. In that minute, I loved her again, maybe more than before. My heart tugged painfully at her, but her happy laughter in the parking lot still lingered in my ears, and I knew that there was no bringing back the past, nothing between us. Drops of drizzling fall rain fell on our faces as we stepped out onto the boulevard. She caught a cab, but she stood near it for a long time and looked hopefully into my eyes, as if still hoping for something. That evening, I took out my guitar again, put my hands on the fingerboards and took a chord. I could not see anything around me. There was only the music in front of me, shimmering with distant stars, stretched out on the infinite universe. I felt that my heart stopped hurting. My soul soared upwards through the cold autumn air, straight to the full moon hanging motionless over the sinful earth, and soon spun in a chorus of colorful stars. But a silver chariot was already waiting for her to take her to the threshold of the crystal palace where God lived. Among the cold bright lights, my life was 35 years old. My life was just beginning. A little epilogue. About a month later, on a dank fall evening, the doorbell rang. Dima opened the door literally. Emily stood on the threshold. "Hi, Ben. Do you know where Ford is?" She shook her head, fixing her unruly bangs, and nodded at the neighbor's apartments. The man was silent for a while, wondering what to say. "He is not here. Open up to me. I know he always leaves you the keys. I will wait for him. I really need to see him." Emily looked at her neighbor and smiled guiltily. Emily, Ford died. I saw her face change and her shoulders slump. She swayed, took a step back, and leaned against the wall to keep from falling. No, this can't be happening. After all, She did not finish and covered her mouth with the palm of her hand so as not to scream. Then she turned and, without saying a word, lowering her head, began to slowly descend the stairs, holding one hand on the rough, unpainted railing. Thank you for joining us today on Deep Stories. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video.